Big news! Wayfair's President's Day clearance is on now, and these are big deals. Like Wayfair's best deals since Black Friday. Right now through February 18th, you can score up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. And we mean everything. Save big on quality furniture for every room in the house, like living room, kitchen and dining, and bedroom. Trust us, this is the sale to score amazing end-of-season savings at Wayfair on the finds your home actually needs. And the cherry on top, with Wayfair's fast and easy shipping, everything home comes to your home. Whether it's a sofa or a spatula, we'll ship it fast straight to your door with free delivery on orders over $35. Now that's what we at Wayfair call bringing it on home. So don't wait. Shop Wayfair's President's Day clearance right now through February 18th to save up to 70% off Wayfair's best deals since Black Friday. Save now at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
O'Reilly.
Save on your next oil change at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Choose Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil to provide maximum performance and protection for your engine. Get a $15 gift card after rebate when you buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge for $34.95. Plus 2 times O Rewards points. Offer valid in-store and online at O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Hearing
Dowhouse,
about him disappointed this in fantasy with this.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. We're back with Operation Domination. Thanks for joining us live on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube. You can check us out on social media at FF Advice Network as well. I'm your host, Dan Mader. I got a full crew. It's been weeks. I feel like it's been a month. We've been on the IR. We finally have a full crew together. We got Chase back, Adam, Chris, been holding down the fort the entire time. I'm here for the second week and excited to do it. It's week 6, fellas. We are through the first quarter of the season officially. And now things start to take shape. All right. So this is what we're going to get into the nitty gritty. And now we can talk about some of the things that are happening. Let's kick it off with the top headline. Robert Saleh did not make the trip back to London with the New York Jets, fired from overseas, and now it is going to be Jeff Ulbrich. And I'm going to preface this with this before I go to the panel here. At first, when the news first broke, we hadn't quite heard it was going to be Jeff Ulbrich. I was thinking to myself, please, dear God, tell me it is not going to be Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. And then it was announced that it was Jeff Ulbrich. And then I thought to myself, why bother? What did you change? You put the defensive coordinator at the head coaching position. You're giving more autonomy to Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. So all this news about Aaron Rodgers didn't get Robert Saleh fired, him trying to go on the Pat McAfee show and talk about that he has a solid relationship with Robert Saleh. Look, the only thing that changed here was the relationship between the quarterback and the head coach, because nothing else changes. Schematically, philosophy, nothing else changes in the situation. So I went from don't be Nathaniel Hackett to, you know what? Why did you even bother? I don't know. Chase, what was your take here?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the reporting has been out there that maybe Saleh didn't have the leadership that they needed from their head coach in the locker room. But I agree with you. Like, what does this really solve at this point? I'm not necessarily sure this makes a whole hell of a lot of difference there in New York. So, I mean, was it surprising? Yes. Was it surprising? No. Rodgers is there. Anything's liable to happen right now, but I'm just glad it's not my neck of the woods right now. Sorry, everybody in New York. But yeah, I don't think anything's really going to change too much. This team's going to be what it's going to be, the leader or no leader. So,
Adam, you know all about coaches, and you get that first week spike when you guys hired Jeff Saturday, in the middle of the season for absolutely no reason off the front desk of ESPN. You think the Jets get that little spike at this week?
I think they could. I think this is a situation where, like, look, I tend to throw out data points from London games anyways. That's just never been something I take too much into account. Like, those games are always super weird. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out what this team is in a sense. Do I think Aaron's necessarily vintage Aaron Rodgers? No. Do I think he's completely washed? No. I think that there's still some things that can be done. I think he can be a solid, okay starting quarterback in this league. What I'm curious to see is kind of to your point about Nathaniel Hackett. The reporting initially was Saleh was about to fire Hackett. Then he came in. However, it sounds like Ulbrich is allowed to make that same move if he so chooses, which is not to actually fire Hackett. That is not going to be happening. But Todd Downing could come into the room. Now, look, do I know that that's necessarily a much better situation? No, I don't. But I am curious to see if anything does change with the offense with an additional voice in the room. Again, I don't necessarily think it's going to be for the better, but sometimes change for change's sake works in a short term, and that's I think exactly what we saw with Saturday, what we saw with Carolina this year, what we've seen in a lot of these situations where sometimes just the shakeup, just the change makes things a little weird for a week, maybe two, maybe three. But to both of your points so far, the Jets are going to be what the Jets are going to be, and it probably doesn't change all that much because of this shakeup and the holistic long term for this season or even moving forward.
I mean, say what you want about Saleh. Maybe he wasn't a good head coach. He definitely didn't have a good record, but at least his side of the ball was good. What needs to change is the offensive side of the ball. What needs to change the offensive side of the ball is to get the running game going. Stop making this a vintage Aaron Rodgers offense. I mean, Chris, do you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, look, I'm going to get to a little bit this in offensive observations, but I when it comes to Robert Saleh and his defensive credit he keeps getting, Jeff Ulrich is a defensive coordinator, so he's the guy who is a hot candidate in the sense that was going to be getting some job interviews this offseason, and he's the guy leading that defense. So if we're keeping him, that defense is still going to be fine. I don't think that Robert Saleh has to stay there to save this defense. I think what you're getting away from is what you talked about when they candidates stand that you didn't mention for the head coaching position. That's Aaron Rodgers. This is Aaron Rodgers' team. Let's stop BSing around it. This is what's happening. Aaron Rodgers took over. And what's going to stop happening now is these stupid interviews and these stupid things on Sunday where Robert Saleh's an idiot saying something about cadence or talking things that just makes no sense. I think that's more things that's about than it's actually that he's going to change anything. I think this is just get the hell out of the way, dude. You're a moron. And then I think Ray Johnson already had axe to grind with him from last year, so this gave him a shot to do so. I don't think Aaron Rodgers asked for this guy's job. I think this is more so just like this guy is making look like a buffoon most of the time when he comes out in the media. Why do we keep doing this all off season, this whole rest of the season?
Bazinga.
Yeah, can't disagree with you there. Okay, so the other piece of news is Spencer Rattler. Now, of course, this is due to the injury of Derek Carr. Make sure you tune in Injury Inquiries on Operation Domination tomorrow, 8 p.m. with Dr. Brian Scott. We'll be on Facebook. We'll be on Twitter. Check us out then. We'll talk about the injury itself. But I did think we needed to get into the idea that Spencer Rattler, not Jake Haener, is going to be starting in this one. I know Adam had a little pine there for Spencer Rattler, so I'm going to kind of let him take the floor. Were you excited about this?
I mean, am I thinking that Spencer Rattler is game ready or that I think Spencer Rattler is this great quarterback? No, I liked him as the guy behind that group in this class, and I do stand by that. I think he was the next best guy, but look, ultimately, I think where he went draft position-wise was correct. I don't think he was any better than that. Let's at least to be clear there. But I do think it's exciting in that I'm not a Jake Haener fan. I think that he doesn't look the part of an NFL quarterback. He's there's just nothing exciting about him. Not to say that there's necessarily a ton exciting about Rattler, but he has an NFL arm. That's accurate. He has the tools. And I think he's someone that will go and at least attempt to, and we'll see if it functions, but will attempt to feed his primary target. I think Shaheed, for all intents and purposes, is dead for the short term. And I am concerned about Kamara because how many red zone attempts are you going to get? And I've not seen Rattler. I think he matured a lot after the transfer to South Carolina, but I've still not seen Rattler the check down guy. So I'm concerned about Kamara's receiving share. But I think Olave, if you're actually looking for him to, I had a gripe with his target share last week. Do I think the quality of those targets is going to move? Like, yeah, I think it's going to get worse, to be clear. But do I think that who will actually consistently be featured in this offense? I do. Just based on, I'm going to try to get to the ball to Olave. I'm going to maybe try to get the ball to Kamara, and we're dumbing it down. That's as far as it's going to get. Otherwise, we're probably scrambling, getting 3 yards, moving on to the next play. Like, I don't think that there's going to be much happening beyond that. So if you have those guys in fantasy, I think it's a good thing. Outside of that, I think this offense has gotten worse. And, I mean, look, since their center went down, they've been arguably the worst pass blocking line in the league. So that's a bad situation for a rookie quarterback to be dropped into, regardless of whether we like that rookie quarterback or not.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think about the entire Saints offense now with the addition of Spencer Rattler. Chris, another quarterback change. This one was not due to injury. Aiden O'Connell. Does this change anything that we care about from a fantasy perspective, a.k.a. Brock Bowers for the Raiders?
I don't think it changes Brock Bowers. I think Aiden O'Connell might help, if anybody, it might be to help Jacoby Myers a little bit more. It might hurt Trey Tucker a little bit down the road, where Gardner Minishew's a little bit more apt to throw the ball down to Tucker and give him the opportunity to be that slot, that slot speed guy. But O'Connell, we saw last year, likes Myers, and he has a good rapport with him. So I think that's going to be something a boon. And I think that historically, O'Connell, especially in college and Purdue, always attacked the middle. That's where he sees the easiest. Bauer shows you he can attack the middle, the best of them, or a guy that can be a big target. As long as they continue to utilize him as one of their top primary playmakers, I think it's not going to necessarily change what they produce. It might, like I said, hurt a little here or help a guy here a little bit there. But overall, this really changes nothing. I think this is just us realizing the Raiders, as we all kind of called out in the show, were really dumb for their quarterback decisions coming into this season.
Yep.
That's going to wrap it up for the breaking news. Let's get into the DFS.
All right. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. We're back in the bar. Missed a week, but hope you guys all, drank well last week anyway. All right, gentlemen, tonight we're going to be making our version of a lemon drop martini. Okay. So when we're setting these up for DraftKings. I'm using DraftKings pricing for a classic slate. And we're doing the Sunday main slate, which this week does not include the Jacksonville, Chicago, London game that's going to be going on early Sunday morning. It's just the ones that happen in the afternoon slots. So let's take a look here. When you look at the lines for the week, there's a lot of road favorites this week. Weirdly enough, a lot of road favorites this week, and a lot of kind of underwhelming point totals when you're looking at which games you want to try and target. But one game that did have a bigger point total is Arizona at my Green Bay Packers. So that's going to be our starting point there as we build this in the shaker. We're going to go with the Green Bay Arizona game. We're going to start off by slotting Jordan Love into our quarterback position now. He's 6,600, so he's one of the more affordable options right now at quarterback for the games with the higher point totals. The higher point total games, Detroit and Dallas, Atlanta, Carolina, Washington, Baltimore, all of those quarterbacks are pretty danged expensive right now. Love's one of the more affordable ones, so we're going to tuck him in there at 6,600. He had a modest game last week. He's continuing to try and bounce back from that injury. He hasn't looked as mobile as we'd like, but he did still throw for a couple of scores last week. Remember, he didn't have Romeo Doubs last week or Christian Watson. He will have Doubs this week. He should. And he's facing an Arizona team that gives up the 7th most points to opposing quarterbacks. So Jordan Love, we're going to slot him into our quarterback position. To pair with him, I said Christian Watson is still doubtful at this moment with that high ankle sprain. We're going to go back to the well with Dontavian Wicks. Now, listen, first off, I did tell you it was a lemon drop martini, if you're wondering why we're going with Wicks here. I know the drops are frustrating with him, but he is affordable at 5,200 right now. He's not going to drop everything they throw to him. And he did lead the team in targets and tied for the team lead in snaps last week. Love still will look his way, especially on shot plays. He's got the best bet to fill in and play the Watson role in this offense. Jaden Reed, yes, he might be a decent pick this week, but he's pretty expensive at 7,000. I'm not overly convinced that he goes off in this game here. And Romeo Doubs, if you're suffering from some Wicks fatigue and you're tired of hearing about Dontavian Wicks, I said Dobbs should play this week. We've seen him operate as a top target earner in this offense, so he's going to cost the same as Wicks at 5,200. You can basically take your pick between the two, but since it's a lemon drop martini, I'm going to plug Wicks in there and hope that he doesn't drop this week. Okay, so now we're going to put some ice in that shaker here, and we're going to go across from the Packers with Michael Wilson at 4,600. He's not the obvious choice to play from the Cardinals across from them. But, listen, when I look at it, I really like Trey McBride in this spot, but I don't want to have to pay up for the tight end position right now. Wilson has a good shot to return value. He hasn't scored since week 1, but he does have 22 targets over the last 3 weeks, and he's coming off his best yardage total of the season against the 49ers. The Packers, even with Xavier McKinney being a ball hawk, they've been giving up the 8th most points to opponents and wide receivers. So we're going to slot Michael Wilson in there at 4,600, save ourselves some money we can spend elsewhere. Okay. So now we're going to get to the good stuff here. We're going to need 2 ounces of vodka. We're going to go with Yeoman vodka. It's a local Northwest Wisconsin vodka from Perlick Distillery. It's actually friends of our family. So I'm going to shout out to Perlick's. If you're ever up by my area, stop by the tasting room there. It's built by the same guy that finished off my, my home bar here. All right, so the vodka here is going to be David Montgomery from the Lions at 6,500 as we pour 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, a little heavy one because welcome to Wisconsin. David Montgomery, that I mentioned that Detroit-Dallas game is the biggest point total of the week right now, actually, and Detroit's favored by about a field goal. Cowboys give up the 5th most points to opposing running backs, so there should be plenty to go around for Montgomery and for Jahmyr Gibbs. I like David Montgomery there, so we're going to plug him into our lineup there, like I said, at 6,500. Okay, then we're going to add a half ounce of Cointreau. Now, some people, when they're making a lemon drop martini, will use triple sec. I like to use the Cointreau. It's a little bit more potent, adds a little bit more of a sophisticated taste to it rather than just the plain sweet of the triple sec. But that half ounce of Cointreau for us is going to be our other running back, Najee Harris, this week. Now, he had a modest game again last week, but he did dominate the touches without Jaylen Warren in the mix, and Jaylen Warren is doubtful again this week and probably will not play. Steelers are favored by 3 on the road now against the Raiders defense that is ranking in the bottom 3rd in the league in rush defense and gives up the 7th most points to fantasy running backs. So, listen, the drama surrounding the Raiders right now with their quarterback controversy we just talked about, on top of the Devontae Adams trade demand saga, I like the Steelers here. I like their leading rusher here. We're going to plug Najee Harris in. So then we're going to add an ounce of lemon juice here, and that's going to be our tight end, Zach Ertz. We're not paying up, like I said, for tight end this week. Ertz is a very affordable 3,700 right now at the tight end position. He's facing a Baltimore defense that has been vulnerable to the pass this season. They're giving up the 2nd most yards through the air. They're giving up the 6th most points to opposing tight ends. Ravens do a good job of pressuring the quarterback, but with Jaden Daniels being as mobile as he is, I think he'll be able to buy himself some time to hit Ertz on some hot reads, some underneath routes. Ertz is second on the team in targets right now behind only scary Terry McLaurin. That's about the best you can hope for in this kind of tight end landscape. You get a guy that's a top 2 option on his team in the pass game, the way that things have been rolling this year at tight end, jump on that, especially when it's only 3,700 to plug him into your lineup here. And the last ingredient we're going to put in there is a half ounce of simple syrup. We're going to put that in our shaker there. Now, keeping with the simple theme of it, we're going to play the Buccaneers defense this week. We just got done talking about New Orleans rolling out a new quarterback who's going to make his first career start there. It was either going to be Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. Neither one of them excites me very much. I do like Rattler probably a little bit more, but the Buccaneers defense is only 2,600. They're 3.5-point road favorites in a game with, an expected point total just 41.5 points. So should be a fairly low scoring game. Buccaneers should be up. They're taking advantage of a new quarterback there. The Bucs blitz at the 8th highest rate in the league. So, listen, I don't like what that means this week for Olave and Shaheed, at least this week with that blitz against the rookie quarterback there. Kamara, Juwan Johnson, I think they might be okay. As the guys who are more of the underneath and more of the hot read type routes, but Tampa's defense is as good a bet as any at that position when there are no sure things. So that's going to round out who I have plugged in here. We are going to shake this up. And while I do that, I'm going to tell you that leaves us a lot of money to spend here now to fill out our lineup with a third wide receiver and a flex option. Okay. And we made the decisions to get at the lower price points first, which means now we get to actually have fun spending the money. Our wide receiver 3 is probably going to be more like our wide receiver 1, but it's our third wide receiver. He's going to be flashy, just like our pre-sugar rimmed martini glass here with gold sugar on it. We went fancy this week, but we can choose now. And this is where I need your help, gentlemen. We can choose between CeeDee Lamb, the most expensive player on the slate to this week at 8,600, or Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8,100. Now remember, they're facing each other in that highest point total game of the week. We're only carrying Montgomery right now from that game. Now, neither guy has been off to an overwhelming start, but the Sun God is 4th in the league in target percentage. CD ranks outside the top 30 in target percentage, but we've seen him be a target monster in the past, and he's averaging almost 2 yards a catch over his career average this year right now. So they are going downfield to him. Detroit gives up points to the wide receivers in bunches. Okay. So we could go with CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. The other 2 choices we have here, we could go with Stephon Diggs at 7,400 with Nico Collins on IR against that New England defense that has a very mediocre pass rush. They rank in the bottom 3rd in pass defense. Or if he's healthy, and he's expected to be healthy this week, we could go with a returning A.J. Brown against the Browns at 7,800. So, Adam, I'll start it off with you. Out of CD, Amon-Ra, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown, who seems like a good fit this week to you there?
Yeah, season long for me, it's CD, but in this matchup in particular, I'm going to skew towards Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm really concerned about the Detroit pass rush going up against that Dallas offensive line, and Dak has not been throwing it down the field against pressure. He's been very keen to dump it off as soon as he sees pressure in his face so far this season. And because of that, he hasn't turned over the ball. I think the offense can operate that way, but that's like the only way to stop him from just hyper-targeting CeeDee Lamb. And that's been the hallmark for this Detroit defense. I'm not really afraid of their secondary at all. If the Dallas Cowboys offensive line was performing a bit better, I would be happy to play CD against that defense. But in the situation at hand, I'm just going to lean towards Amon-Ra, who's
we got to vote for the Sun God. All right, Dan, who you liking out of this group here?
Yeah, well, I have to echo everything that Adam just said. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked inside my top 4 wide receivers going into this week. I don't see who on Dallas is going to be able to cover. I do love the running backs. You mentioned Montgomery. I wouldn't be opposed. We're talking flex, right? I almost wouldn't be opposed if we had the money to go Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, because that's the biggest weakness of all, is that the Detroit offensive line should be able to mow down what's left of this crippled Cowboys defensive line. But I still want pieces of this offense. So, yeah, I would go Amon-Ra St. Brown of those options as well.
All right, that's 2 votes for the Sun God. Chris, where are you thinking about on this slate here?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little contrarian on there. I'm actually going to go with CeeDee Lamb on this one. I like A.J. Brown's return, but I'm not big on playing guys fresh off an injury. Always concerned with that kind of thing, even if Denzel Ward could be out with injury this week. But I look at CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, he hasn't quite been the guy that we want him to be, but he's been involved heavily. And we think about who else are they going to go to? Rico Dowdle, Tolbert, Ferguson. They're going to go to the ball with CeeDee Lamb. We know the Detroit Lions are going to be able to score points in this game. And I think that's my concern overall, is the Detroit Lions have so many different mouths that they can feed. Jameson Williams can eat in this game. The running backs all can eat in this game. The tight end, who has eaten this whole season, could eat in this game. So this is where I love St. Brown. He's been a guy that's had to kind of share them when he's used to this year. And I think, therefore, CD's a guy that I just look in the big-time game in Dallas. I think CD's going to have that guy I would have in my lineup.
All right.
We got CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott fighting with each other on the sideline last week. That was hilarious, by the way.
I kind of like that, actually.
Did you read the lips? Yeah. Big balls. All right.
That was hysterical.
Yeah. All right. So, we got 2 votes for Amon-Ra. We got a vote for CeeDee Lamb. You know what? Let's go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We'll plug him in at 8,100. Honestly, when I first did this build, Chris, I went with Lamb in that slot myself, just so that you know that. But right now, when we've got 2 other guys saying Amon-Ra, we'll go with the Sun God, okay? 8,100. Now, that's going to leave us with $6,900 left to spend for technically what's our flex position. But it's nice because it means we can go any position we want to, and we've got money to spend. Some of the options. Now, we don't know yet if Joe Mixon is actually going to play this week. But Joe Mixon at 6,900, if he plays this week, is an option there. Chris Godwin at 6,900. James Conner, who we're already targeting that game, but James Conner at 6,800, Devonta Smith at 6,800, again, expected to be back and actually play this week, just like Brown. So, I mean, they're going to have their full complement of dudes coming off of their bye week there in Philadelphia. Josh Jacobs, again, from that Packer game that we're already targeting at 6,700, or Drake London at 6,700. So Mixon, Godwin, Connor, Devontae Smith, Jacobs, or London. Who we looking at there? Chris, since we started top last time, we'll start at the bottom with you this time.
To me, there's a lot of questions. I don't know what Mixon's status is going to be. Is he week to week, month to month, year to year? God knows. Drake London's playing the Carolina Panthers. I know that, so I'm going to go with Drake London in a fantastic matchup. I know maybe London has to score points in this game, but we see London be involved in the red zone, so I think this is a game that I'm going to go the safer option of all those different grounds he named. I'm going to go Drake London.
Well, and again, it is one of the higher point totals of the week. Like we said, Atlanta at Carolina, it's got a 47.5 point spread there, or total there, and Atlanta's a 6-point favorite at the moment. So, I mean, yeah, going with a member of the Atlanta offense is not going to hurt my feelings. Dan, what's your take on this between Mixon, Godwin, Connor, Smith, Jacobs, London?
Yeah, so I thought I would lean towards a little bit of a Drake London, but the one thing that kind of worries me is that the Falcons may look at this as an opportunity to get their running game right, as most teams do. And look, you could do whatever you want, the Carolina's defense. Yep. I'm not saying Drake London's not going to go off in this game, even if Bijan has a great game, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit more of an emphasis in that spot. The fact is that you can run on Green Bay right now. I got James Conner as a top 10 running back heading into this week. Nobody else in that backfield is even getting touches at the moment, and it could be a higher scoring game with good opportunities for James Conner to wind up in the end zone inside the 5-yard line. So I'm going to lean a little bit towards Conner, but it's close between him and Drake London for me.
All right, we've got a vote for two different dudes now, Adam.
Chase, real quick. I'm going to change mine to Connor too, because I didn't realize Connor was an option. So I'll go.
Okay. So now we've got 2 votes for Connor and kind of a half-hearted like London response that we got earlier. So 2 votes for James Conner in that presumably high-scoring game in Lambeau. Adam, what's your take on these guys? Who would you want to see in the flex spot here?
The other name that I'll throw out there as a consideration is Chris Godwin is someone that I like. I like that matchup, and they are one of the offenses throwing the most in the red zone. While Mike Evans is the leader there in the red zone, it's been pretty close so far this season. Having said that, I am going to join you guys on the James Conner train, who has also, in his own right, been one of the running backs getting the most attempts in the red zone, and this is a good opportunity for them.
Yes, and we know that they do use him in the pass game too, so if they are passing to him, I mean, hey, so much the better. We're not using Murray in this game, so it's not like the passing scores necessarily hurt us all that much. So, okay, we're going to plug James Conner. That means we're going with 2 Cardinals and 2 Packers from that same game there. Let's hope it lives up to its billing. That's going to give us, as that flex is our garnish, that's our lemon wheel wedge there. And so then there's our lemon drop martini in honor of Dontavian Wicks, hopefully hanging onto the damn ball this week. We're going with Love at quarterback, Montgomery and Harris at the running back position, Wicks, Michael Wilson, and the sun god Amon-Ra St. Brown at our wide receiver spots, Zach Ertz at tight end, James Conner is our flex at 6,800, and we're playing that Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense against the New Orleans offense that may completely disappear. I don't think anybody will die on the field, as Adam would say, but it may not be pretty. So there it is. There's your DFS cocktail. Let's hope it's a good one. Should taste good.
Cheers, Chase. Let's go to dominating defense.
Well, Chase, I don't know if somebody's not going to die, as Adam would say. I think there's a good chance Spencer Rattler may die in this game. Look, I have an answer for this defensive game. What I had going into before the news broke out Spencer Rattler was going to start, initially I 100% behind the Pittsburgh Steelers defense taking on the Raiders. This Raiders doesn't matter who the quarterback's going to be. The way he beat the Steelers is he attack the ball, he throw the ball down the field. Guess what? The Raiders can't pass protect. They don't want to throw the ball down the field anyway. So all the things that add up to be able to beat the Steelers don't add up for the Raider offense to be able to move the ball. They can't run the ball at all. I think this is going to be a really bad situation for poor Aiden O'Connell, who's going to get thrown out there to the Wolves. But talking about the Wolves, I flipped my script, and I love your pick this week, Jason, for the your cocktail. This defense taking on Spencer Rattler. The reason Spencer Rattler, in my opinion, is going to start this week is real simple. that interior offensive line for the Saints is horrendous. We're not talking about bad. We're talking horrendous. Okay. And what we're going to have to see is you're going to have to be able to run and you're going to have to be able to move the ball. Yeah, Alvin Kamara might catch the ball 1,000 times, but I don't remember Spencer Rattler checking the ball a whole lot down in college. That's not one of his strengths. He likes to hold the ball a lot. They might call different things for him to do. He's not the most accurate dude. He's a decent athlete. He also prone to turnovers. And historically, Todd Bowles owns rookie quarterbacks. So about the blitz rate earlier, Chase, this Tampa Bay defense is going to come. I know they're all banged up. It does not matter. This is going to be a super issue. We watched Derek Carr just take shots, and we watched this offense ground to a halt without Taysom Hill and Eric McCoy once they got, basically banged up. Alvin Kamara had 11 carries, 26 yards last week. That's not versus Vita Vea. So Vita Vea might just single-handedly eat Spencer Rattler at some point in this game and indeed kill him. So I definitely took Bay for the dominating defense of the week.
Love it. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. We come back on the other side. We got offensive observations for you guys. So we are here. We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.
You find me offensive, I find you offensive for finding me offensive.
Dan, as you said, we're already past the quarter part of the season. We're in week 5. So I'm going to do a two-parter here. The first part, I want to kind of talk about just the season, how it's going. A season where we have Bo Nix has more QB top 12 finishes than Patrick Mahomes. Yes, you heard that correctly. And Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. And so does Daniel Jones, who has more multiple touchdown passes than all those guys as well. Yes, this is where we are in fantasy football. How do we get here? Because dumb shit. Yes, people's heads are falling off, but also dumb shit. So, Dan, I'm going to give you dumb, dumber, and dumbest real quick. For dumb, look, I understand the Browns have to pay Deshaun Watson. We all know that. They have to eat that contract regardless. I don't know if you can bench him, but the one thing you did not have to do was redesign an offense that was able to get to the playoffs with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback at one point, with P.J. Walker playing quarterback at one point, and still able to produce, 30 points versus that Colts offense, or defense, I should say, in a game. Meanwhile, we have Deshaun Watson, who has yet to have 18 points in this entire season for the Cleveland Browns. A team that ranks last in yards per play, yards per game, passing success rate. So how did you get there? Well, let's give the keys to the guy who hasn't been healthy, who's looked good but at half versus the Ravens. Let's revamp an offense and build it around him. Let's go spread with an offensive line that can't pass protect anybody. Let's avoid using a running game this past week that was averaging 5 yards per carry. Foreman had over 5 yards a carry. Ford had was 5 yards a carry. I know they didn't do great in the first half, but guess what? Commit to what you are. What you are not is a team that should be featuring Deshaun Watson. What we saw, a Miami Dolphin team was use Tyler Huntley, and we figured out a way to still try to put a manageable offense. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't great, but they won because they grounded it out. They used the playmakers they have. Their offensive line sucks too, but they realized, let's not drop back and spread out and help our guys get killed and pretend like Deshaun Watson is going to save us. So that's dumb. We all know that they should have win it. Now, what could be dumber? Oh, those New York Jets. Dan, you talked about it to start off the show. This is an offense that has scored the same amount of points at this point in the season as the Zach Wilson crappy offense last year. That has 3 less yards total at the same point last year. So is it a Zach Wilson issue? Is it a Robert Saleh issue? What it sounds like is a scheme issue that we just gave the keys to the castle to Mr. Aaron Rodgers to do whatever he wants to. This is just real quick, a little number, and I'm going to make sure I get it right because Dan likes to make sure I have my stats correctly. But we're talking about a guy, okay, that Seth Walder said has top 3. The Jets, this team is, I'm sorry, top 3 in short fade routes, deep fades, short outs, in slants, and goes. But they're the bottom 3 in deep crosses, medium crosses, deep outs, comebacks, and digs. You got quick receivers. You got 2 big, tall receivers. Let's just keep throwing the same patterns over and over again. We watched this offense stagnate, poor Chase in Green Bay. It's got McCarthy fired. And we're watching the same thing happen in New York. But I can't go into the Jets because I could go all day on the Jets and just how the dumbest. But the dumbest of them all is our good old, Pittsburgh Steelers, and forget Arthur Smith. Mr. Arthur Smith just took Chase. I was excited. You're going to play Najee Harris this week. They're having a great matchup, matchup, right? They had a great matchup versus Dallas Cowboys. What did they do? Let's ask Justin Fields to throw the ball down the field more often than we've ever did the entire season. They had more 10-yard attempts this past game than they had combined the entire season. They asked Justin Fields not to use his legs. Let's just make sure that we do everything that you shouldn't do. Let's play Pat Freiermuth less than we play Connor Hayward in passing situations.
Yeah.
Let's take Pickens out for load management situations. And this is the offense that you guys brought in to save Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith, good God, please go away. And this isn't a Justin Fields being benched and Russell Wilson's going to solve it. This isn't George Pickens having an attitude and quitting on pass routes. All those things are definitely problems. But this is Mike Tomlin not being ballsy, like calling these guys out, number one, like he usually would. And number 2, what is your doing offense? We got rid of Matt Canada to watch this. So I just say thank you for Dumb and Dumbest. But to get you guys involved, I go to my second part, and I want to ask you guys, we're talking about some trashy things and trash, but there can be treasure in trash sometimes. So I'm going to go through a couple of guys. I'm going to ask each of you to comment on one player, and then I'm going to ask you if we kind of have a consensus real quick on do you agree with these players as somebody who could be the next trash or treasure. A great example would be we had a lot of talk going into the season about Tyron Tracy and his usage and how he would be involved, and nobody's really excited about Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary started the season as a bell cow. He was the guy that everybody's super excited to have because you didn't expect to have a bell cow running back in your hands. You got late route value. He gets injured. He wasn't really being super effective. Here comes Tracy, has a great game versus Seattle, has 118 yards. Will he be somebody now that's going to be probably picked up in most leagues? Yes. Is he going to be probably somebody on a lot of rosters moving forward? Probably. And has he earned himself a chance to be, a value down the road? So here's some guys who probably have been cut or might be cut or might be sitting in the trash. I'm going to start with you, Dan. I'm going to start with the rookies because a lot of rookies are getting a lot of talk on the running back position. So Blake Corum. Blake Corum was a guy that we finally saw get on the field, Dan. He actually had some carries. Is Blake Corum a guy that I should just leave in the trash, or is that possible treasure to actually be looking at maybe to add to my roster?
Well, look, I think it's a positive sign that he finally got on the field, finally played in front of Ronnie Rivers, because that had been a concern up until this point of you had to question, if Kyren Williams does get hurt, would Ronnie Rivers be involved at some point? I still believe Corum's value ultimately has not changed from what it was in the beginning of the season, which is a handcuff to one Kyren Williams if and when he does, in fact, get injured. So right now, we're in the thick of bye weeks, right? So the only way you can really justify holding a handcuff, are you a team that's 5-0, 4-1? Are you the Kyren Williams owner? I think that's the only way that you're holding on to a guy like a Blake Corum as of right now. So that's what my take is on that.
All right, so Dan says he's still trash. Adam, trash real quick or treasure possibly?
I think the potential upside for holding on to him as a handcuff is maybe a little bit higher. I think he would be an immediate RB1 if Kyren was to go down. Having said that, I do think he is a handcuff. I don't think he overtakes Kyren.
Okay. Jace, real quick.
No, that's exactly my take on it, too. I mean, he only ran 5 times against Green Bay, but he averaged 5 yards a carry there last week. He looked okay last week. He looked like he could be usable. They actually threw the ball to him once or twice there. He's got that kind of potential, I think, because of how they use the running back in the offense, that if Williams went down and you have Corum on your roster or you could pick him up off the wire, that could be a league winner type move, but that's the only way he has value in and of himself this season is if Williams goes down. He is nothing more than a handcuff. But yeah, let's all forget that Ronnie Rivers ever had to come into any conversation. I like the dude. I'm sure he's a good person, but he's not a fantasy football relevant character.
All right. And just to clarify, guys, real quick, the reason we're looking at this is to try to be ahead of the curve because, yes, of course, if Kyren Williams gets hurt, we want to have Blake Corum. We all know that. Yep. But now that we want to know right now, with like as Dan alluded to, with different roster spots crunches, are these guys are being dropped in that, different places? These are guys that if you get your hands on at the right time could be blow-up spots for you down the road. Are these guys that we're going to try to get out of the trash? So moving on to the next person, I'm going to go to you, Adam. All right. Hold on, sorry guys. My phone's messing with me here. Jalen Wright, Adam. Jalen Wright is a guy that finally also got involved with Dolphins offense. We saw him, his explosive rate's been great throughout the season. He's one of the top missed tackle rates. A guy who's been very explosive when he's been involved. We just seen people like Jeff Wilson play ahead of him much of the season, different guys. With Evan Achane having his injury issues, and we saw Raheem Mostert return. Is Jalen Wright after this week a guy that, somebody that I want to add, trash, or treasure?
I would probably throw him in the same bucket as Corum, and that someone, if I want him on my roster if I can, but he is a cut candidate if I need a starter in the immediate term, like as we're in the bye weeks going on, and his injuries are piling up, and things like that. But if I can hold him onto my roster, I want to, because to your point, Achane's had injuries, throughout his entire NFL career pretty frequently. Anytime he gets more than 13 carries, he's as sure as gone, functionally. And Mostert is a running back on the wrong side of 30 who has a pretty significant injury history himself. And I do think he's the next best running back behind those two. I think he will show to that coaching staff that he is better than Jeff Wilson. And I think if he hasn't done that already, I think last week, was a very big step in that direction. So ultimately, he's someone that I want to make an attempt to keep on my roster, but he's not someone that I'm going to be so stubborn to not, fill in points and win games in the short term if that's what it takes. But I'm going to do my damnedest to keep him around because I think he will have some value this season.
All right. Chase, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, the way that they use their running backs, the way they used Mostert and Wright last year, Mostert and Achane, I should say, if Achane misses time, Jalen Wright could literally just be Achane from last year. He's got that kind of speed. He's got explosive ability. I think they liked what they found last year in that two running back setup. I mean, both those guys are blazing ass fast, and so is Jalen Wright. I think that's why he was drafted.
You're going treasure.
Yeah, I'm going treasure there because, listen, he's built a little more like Mostert, but he could fill either role in that offense in a heartbeat. I would keep him. I would try and grab him if you've got room on your roster. I do have him in a couple leagues. I like Jalen Wright.
Dan, trash or treasure?
Trash. Look, Devon Achane's not going to miss any time here with the concussion, them coming off the bye week. Raheem Mostert is, in fact, back. He goes back to being the third string running back. And so you need multiple guys to get hurt before you feel comfortable playing him as anything more than a low-end RB3, frankly, which we're talking about flex. And right now, the way this year has gone, your flex should likely be a wide receiver. So I'm going with trash here on this one.
All right.
He's got the best per carry average of the three of them so far.
He's still not playing. But he's still not playing ahead of him. He didn't play ahead of Raheem Mostert this week. We know he's not going to play ahead of Devon Achane when he's back on the field either.
All right. So we have strong disagreements, but we go to Adam, and Adam says treasure. Right, Adam? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. And Chase, for you, we have a guy, coming off IR possibly soon, a guy near and dear to your heart possibly, Marshawn Lloyd set to come off the IR. You talk about Josh Jacobs being on your squad for DFS this week. Josh Jacobs has been struggling to get in the end zone, hasn't been very efficient, and continues to kind of split carries with the other running backs. Manny Wilson's been the other guy. Manny Wilson hasn't been super special, but has his moments here or there. But is Marshawn Lloyd a guy that should stay as trash or treasure?
Honestly, I have him as droppable right now, even if you stashed him on IR all year. Jacobs looks fine. He hasn't been great this year, but when they have actually committed to him and run with him, Jacobs looks fine. The offensive line is playing well right now. Wilson has been good in the backup role himself. He's not shooting the lights out. It's not an Achane Mostert situation. It's not Jordan Mason's CMC. But Wilson's been good for what they've asked him to do. Jacobs has added what they wanted him to add to this offense when they actually use him, when they have the opportunity to use him as such. Marshawn Lloyd, it sucks that you got hurt. I still love him in Dynasty because Josh Jacobs is not going to be there forever. And Emmanuel Wilson is not a starter caliber. I thought Lloyd was one of the top 2 running backs in this draft. Anyway, I still like him, but he's droppable right now. There's no reason to have him in redraft formats right now. Unless you're desperate for a guy and you have one of the other 2 Packer backs.
All right. Adam, trash or treasure?
For me, trash. I'm not necessarily interested. The run game hasn't necessarily, garnered a bunch of points in the first place in Green Bay as far as fantasy is concerned. So I'm not even necessarily sure that if he was to start, that I would be dying to get him into my lineup. He would be certainly a flex consideration. But having said that, he's not even showing that he's going to get there when healthy, fully, and has the full trust of the team. So I'm not interested. There's just too many variables that need to change for him to have much value for me.
All right, Dan.
Yeah, we don't even know when Marshawn Lloyd's actually going to be 100%, and we've seen him come back from an injury and then get knocked out again. I just don't think this is his year, which is fine. Dynasty-wise, Adam alluded to this next year for 100%, but trash for this season.
All right, and the final one, this is one for everybody. I want you guys to pick one of these guys. Your options are, this is for our deep dumpster dive. We're digging deep for some treasure. If I'm going to go Kamani Vital, Will Shipley, Audric Estime, or another person I have not named. So Dan, we'll start off with you. You go Kami Vital, Will Shipley, Audric Estime, or other.
I think Kamani Vidal is still an option here to kind of go with a little bit. So Gus Edwards is showing that he has nothing left in the tank. That's the number one thing. And then J.K. Dobbins, look, I want to believe he's going to be able to stay healthy all season. The fact is we've never seen it before, and I hope he doesn't get hurt. But I think there's still room here for Kamani Vidal to have the most upside of all those players. Audric Estime, you have a situation here where Javonte looks like he's starting to settle in. That Broncos offense for relative to what they have been, is starting to settle in a little bit around him. Will Shipley's the third string. He's behind Kenneth Gainwell in the pecking order here. Again, not interested in third string players. So for me, it is still Kamani Vidal because of the, flux that could be the Chargers backfield in front of him right now.
Chase.
I'm not into Vidal. I'll tell you that. I'm going to disagree with you there, Dan. I mean, they only gave him they only gave him 11 carries in the one preseason game, and then he's been a healthy scratch. Hassan Haskins has been getting on the field, for crying out loud. My favorite player of these 3 guys coming into the season was Shipley. I think he's probably a lost cause for 24 as well. I still like him long term, but Barkley's playing too well. Gainwell's entrenched. I don't have anybody in mind right now, but I can't stand any of the 3 of these guys. I'm going to say other.
All right. And Adam.
I think of this group, I want it to
make
be
the
Vidal.
Homer pick.
I want it to be Vidal, but to your point, playing behind Hassan Haskins is pretty damning. Look, I can accept playing behind some of the Broncos backs, or even Kenneth Gainwell, because I think that they're NFL players. Hassan Haskins is not an NFL player. He just isn't. He's bad. So
he's playing special teams, which is why he was playing, for the record. And Kamani Vidal is not in a position where he's playing special teams. That's been the big difference as far as who's been inactive. I don't think that's going to be the case, if somebody were to get hurt like a J.K. Dobbins.
And to that point, kind of, Dan, to what you mentioned, I think if anything, he would be the Dobbins backup, not the Gus Edwards backup. Like if we were splitting those roles, and I think Gus Edwards is the one that, if anyone's getting benched, it would be him. He hasn't been performing, to your point, versus Dobbins. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon unless he gets hurt. And certainly that's something that happens. It has happened to him more than a lot of other backs, but I'm just not someone that's necessarily interested on betting on injury. Now, this Denver offense is going in a lot of different directions. Yes, Javonte has had one very good game, and it was a very good game. He looked great. I think he is the best running back, and they should commit to him. But I think to pretend that Sean Payton is going to stay down that path is silly. Sean Payton has not shown that he's necessarily just going to take the easiest answer with the back that is actually performing. He's going to do something silly, and I think that could lead to Estime, who I think would be in a prime position for any of the roles that they could foreseeably put him in. So I think if anyone was to have a good chance, I think it's Estime. Now, having said that, I think Vidal's ceiling is probably higher because, again, that Dobbins role is, I think, the role that is better built for that offense. Is where the points are going to come from. But I just don't see the pathway. I don't for him. And for Estime, I think it's as simple as if this season's lost, they could ship Javonte and suddenly he's in there.
They do keep trying to ram another dude in that. I mean, remember, we're only 2 weeks removed from Taylor Beatty being a thing.
Yeah.
Until he went on IR this week. They keep trying to shove somebody else in there down our throats.
All right, so that
well, keep doing that. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, as our rookie running back, Treasure. And, Chase did a great job finding some old guys. Kareem Hunt, was a guy that people are a trash. Then you'll find a little bit of treasure. Possibly Juju Smith-Schuster could be another guy like that. So that was Treasure for you guys. Great job. And real quick for Adam. Adam, saying Spencer Rattler was the guy you like mostly after this quarterback class after the other guys is like saying Kelly Mond's better than Ian Book.
Yeah, agreed. I just liked Spencer Rattler the most of this group. I was not in love with Spencer Rattler. I think he's a fine third, fourth round quarterback.
But I do love the temperature check though, Adam. So I think it's your turn.
Hot air, so hot in here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is time for the temperature check. So if this is your first time around here, we're gonna look at a couple guys in Dynasty. Who are actually have trade volume. A lot of shows they'll talk about guys who are, I think they're overvalued, undervalued, whatever, but if they're not actually moving, then it's a moot point. It doesn't really matter if teams don't actually want these guys or people aren't interested in buying these guys. So these are guys who are actually being traded in real leagues very frequently. We're going to talk about whether these guys who are moving are buys or sells. So Dan, we're going to kick it to you first, and that is with the running back we just alluded to, and that's Kareem Hunt. He is the third most traded player over the sample, which is the weekend moving forward. He is the second most of the running backs, so third most traded, second most running back in those trades. Keep trade cut, he has moved up 27 spots over the last month, but that still only brings him to running back 59, so there's nothing crazy. Normally I would tell you the ECR, but this is the Chiefs bye week. Some of the trades that have been doable for Kareem Hunt so far since he, the short week since they played. 2025 threes, Keaton Mitchell. I saw a 2026 too, and I've seen him as someone who team players are loving to use as like a throw-in for bigger trade packages. So that's something you could consider as well. If you want Kareem Hunt, or two, and probably more importantly, if you're trying to get rid of him, like you got your value really quick, get him out while the getting is good. And my only note here was that there's questions about Pacheco, even if he may return this regular season at all, but most likely we're expecting him around that week 10 mark, thereabouts. So Dan, what do you got as far as Kareem Hunt?
Well, first, I just got to say, the Chiefs, they don't have the Fountain of Youth stored away somewhere. They had the Lazarus Pit stored away somewhere. They're just bringing people back to life.
2015 back to life.
Well, I don't know what's happening.
Comics reference.
Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm just like, I don't even know how these guys are performing right now. These guys couldn't get jobs in the NFL anywhere else, and they're coming on and making big plays and big moments for the Chiefs. So shout out to them. If you can get value for Kareem Hunt, you're absolutely pulling the trigger. I mean, worst case scenario, Pacheco is not himself and he's worked into a rotation. He's not going to not be involved. They're going to get him going before the playoffs here, and he's going to be back before the fantasy football playoffs. Whether it's week 10, week 11, week 12, we'll find out, but it's going to be before the fantasy football playoffs. No, if you can get, especially if you're not the Pacheco owner, if you can get value for Kareem Hunt, I am pulling that trigger. If you're the Pacheco owner, I can understand maybe wanting to hold on to him a little bit. But yeah, I'm getting value here.
Tend to agree. I think it's free value for a running back his age.
Real quick.
And look, the value came from a sub 4 yards per carry performance at the whole. Chris, yeah.
I was going to say, does this remind you guys of C.J. Anderson's run with the Rams a couple of years ago? Because that's what it reminds me of a lot of ways.
I was just going to say he might be entering the Latavius Murray mercenary stage of his career right now, where he'll just sign on with a place every year as the third stringer, be a lifesaver for 2 weeks, and then disappear again.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that there's probably some situations where he will provide some fantasy value. I just don't know if, from a dynasty perspective, if it's going to be worth hanging on to.
I agree.
I think if I can get a third for it, I'm willing to do so, even if that third is ultimately a trade piece down the line. On to our next player, though, and this is another running back. We're going to go to you, Chris, and that is Chuba Hubbard. He is the 18th overall most traded player, 6th at the running back position on Keep Trade Cut. He is up 16 spots, bringing him to RB 34, which is their dynasty ranking. On the weekly ECR, he is running back 13, which I'll leave my opinion aside, but I think that's insane. Some recent trades for him, and these are also insane, so maybe I'm the odd one out here, but a 2026 first, a 2025 2, I've seen him go for a 3 as well as Jalen Polk and Stafford. He's another guy who's been very popular as a throw-in for bigger deals, and I have some examples for him, and that is a 2025 1 for him and a 2025 1 for Brock Purdy, which in Dynasty, right, this is a super flex league specifically. So a 1 and Chuba Hubbard for Brock Purdy. That feels pretty good. Joe Mixon and Chuba Hubbard for Achane, which, look, I know we are not necessarily the show that loves Achane the most, but the reality of the situation is he is one of the more valuable backs on the market in Dynasty so far. And as well, Chuba Hubbard, and a 2026 third-round pick for Kyler Murray. And again, this was a super flex league. I double-checked. I had to check. This was a super
Why
flex
do
league
none
for
of
that
my
trade
trade requests from other dudes look like that? God darn it.
I'm just saying, these are some real deals that have happened. And the note that I wanted to have here is we do have a quote from the Carolina head coach that Jonathan Brooks is, quote-unquote, really close. Now, he's going to get worked in slowly as he gets on the field, but there could be a change in the guard in Carolina regardless, especially as this is a season that has arrived dead in the water for him anyways. But, Chris, what say you? Where are you on Chuba Hubbard?
Well, coming into the season, I didn't think Chuba Hubbard was going to die, and I also thought Jonathan Brooks wouldn't play right off the bat, so this isn't necessarily a surprise. Chuba Hubbard being this good is a little surprising. However, he was really good last year, so overall, I think he's got value. Now, having said that, Adam, the trades that you're talking about, a first-rounder, absolutely get rid of Chuba Hubbard. A second-rounder, absolutely, and then packages of quarterbacks, yeah, thank you very much. Chuba Hubbard should, I can understand if you want to have a run with him, and I don't think he's going to be a guy that necessarily gets phased out the rest of the season. I know Carolina isn't playing for anything except for they have a brand new head coach. And a lot of times that brand new head coach doesn't want to just lose. So I wouldn't be surprised that if they do play the veterans a bit more than people think they're going to throughout the season. I think that's why Andy Dalton's still out there or to play as much as he has been playing. I think this Carolina team realizes they have to try to set some kind of boundaries for the future. But anyway, having said that, Chuba Hubbard, to me, if I can get any of those you're talking about, Adam, as Chase said, please let me join these leagues because I am definitely not getting offers like that. Yeah. But anything less than a third rounder, I definitely wouldn't be looking necessarily to sell him for anything either. Like, I'm not just going to dump him.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. He's been super efficient this year, and kind of to your point, look, maybe that last month or two of the season Brooks takes over, but I think that's a long ways away. Like, when he gets back in the field, I think we're looking at least a month before, if not longer, before he makes any meaningful dent into Hubbard's carries. I think I'd be more worried about Miles Sanders kind of losing his, still getting carries somehow.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that brings us to our last player, and Chase, I had to make this for you in particular as, formerly on your team, and that's Davante Adams. He's potentially on the move in the real NFL, and that has meant he's on the move a lot in fantasy. This is a guy who is the 4th most traded player in these Dynasty Fantasy Leagues, 2nd most at the wide receiver position. On Keep Trade Cut, he has actually dropped back 2 spots to the wide receiver 38 overall. And this is another guy who's an NA on the ECR because of his injury, as well as the ongoing, trade discussions around him. A trade feels likely to come soon, but we did just have Antonio Pierce say today that he is still a Raider, and that if his injury issue was to clear up, he would play. But that just does not feel true, gauging the situation. But I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Well, and they did say, too, that trade talks with the Jets and the Saints have slowed down. Oh, that's a big shocker, right? I mean, now the Jets fire their damned head coach, and the Saints don't have his buddy at quarterback for the next couple of weeks at least. So, trade talks slowing down. Listen, I love Devontae as a Packer fan, as a guy who watched him actually come into his own, actually find himself in the league and then become one of the best receivers in the game right now. But he's a hold for me right now until we see if and where he's traded. Okay. But then if he's traded, no matter where it's traded, but if he's traded, we want to try to capitalize on the optimism bump that he's going to get then. Don't do it right now. If you can get after he's traded, if he's traded, you can get a young running back or a wide receiver for the future or a good pick. I mean, if somebody wants to give you a first round in 26 or a 25 second rounder or whatever, I mean, that'd be great. But and do it. But right now, if you try to sell him tonight, people are targeting you on a short sale for him. Okay. So you're selling him low right now as of this moment. After he gets traded, everybody will be, oh, he went to the Bills. He's got Josh Allen thrown to him, or, oh, he's back with his buddy Aaron, or whatever. After a trade happens, if a trade happens, then you want to try to capitalize on his value. Because right now, you are the guy who's going to come out on the short end of that, getting pennies on the dollar for a guy who, although he's aging out in Dynasty, is still a factor and still capable of being a factor right now. He's had double-digit targets over half of his games last season with Aiden O'Connell. So it's not a given that they give him away, and it's not a given that he doesn't play well with Aiden O'Connell under center. But, he's probably more of a boomer bust play than you're used to from Devontae Adams, but you're holding him right now and waiting to see what shakes out with his situation. Do not just sell him short because you want to get out from under the drama.
Yeah, for sure. And to add on to that, I missed some of those trade examples on the lead-in. Some of those examples were a 2026 1, a 2025 2, Chicago Bears wide receiver DJ Moore, and Houston Texans running back Joe Mixon.
I'd take DJ Moore for him all day long. Yeah, I mean, because that's the same. You're getting younger at the
DJ
position.
Moore, I'm in. I think otherwise it's a conversation. I'm with you. I think he's a hold, but if I get a really good value, then all bets are off. But yeah, thank you for the time, and that's been our Dynasty Temp check.
Well, thanks for that, Adam. And now it's time to get some big time bets. We're going to bounce back a little bit from last week. And to do that, I'm doing a same game 3-player prop parlay. We are hammering the Washington Commanders, Baltimore Ravens this particular week. We got Terry McLaurin over 57.5 receiving yards. He's been over that 2 of the last 3. He's 6th amongst receivers with 25 targets or more this season. And ADOT with 14.7. He's at a 26.1% target share. Very healthy. And guess what? The Ravens are 6th in passing yards per play allowed, 7th in EPA per pass allowed, and 3rd in yards allowed to wide receivers. So I love Terry McLaurin, but not to be outdone. The guy throwing him the football. Oh, I like his bet too. Over 224.5 passing yards. He's been over that 4 of the last 5 games. Other than week 1, he's gone over that mark every single week, guys. And we just laid out how much of a great matchup the Baltimore Ravens are for the passing game. And we've seen him get more aggressive as the season has now worn on. He is 3rd in yards per attempt amongst all quarterbacks with 25 pass attempts or more so far this season. So give me the over on Jaden Daniels at 224.5 yards. And to complete this same game parlay, we have Justin Hills Justice Hill, over 15.5 receiving yards. He's been over that 3 of the last 5 games. He's a 12.6% target share right now. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I know last week actually was a high-scoring game between them and the Cincinnati Bengals. They only had 8 yards receiving, but he had plenty of opportunities. He had 2 more snaps than Derrick Henry. He had 15 routes run. I expect that to get corrected this week. He'll be more involved in the pass game against the Commanders, so give me Justice Hill over 15.5 receiving yards, and that's going to be our same game parlay for our big time.
And I'll crush you like a paper cup.
All right, so end this show and to end the show strong. We have crush or busts for the week. Our must starts and our must sits. That's what we're looking at here for this segment. So to kick it all off, and I love this right away because Adam's back in my parlay play here. He's my man. Who you got?
I got Terry McLaurin. I'm right there with you. I'm so glad that you went over a lot of my talking points so I can make this quick. The only other thing I want to add to what you have to say, and I agree with your entire spiel there, was that not only is the ADOT for McLaurin and the target share for McLaurin really healthy, but Jaden's ADOT has been moving up and up in the right direction. You know, we started it out when we were talking about the first 2 weeks, this isn't sustainable. He's looking really good as a passer on the box score, but that completion percentage is just coming from, an ADOT of, I think it was like 3.5 maybe week 1, and
it was
we were
brutal.
hanging around that 4. But we finally have gotten it, him pushing the ball down the field the last 3-4 weeks. And I think we've gotten to a point where it is feeling a little bit more sustainable as far as his passing ability. Now, will the efficiency dip at some point? I would expect so. But this Ravens secondary has been underperforming. And ultimately, this is a game with, a high over-under. Again, that Baltimore secondary has been underperforming. You talked about, a high-scoring game with Baltimore and Cincinnati last week. We have the good comparison, right, where Terry McLaurin, I believe, scored against Cincinnati when they played, and that was a high-scoring game as well. So on the whole, I'm excited about Terry McLaurin and this Washington offense on the whole going in Baltimore.
Love it when Adams backs my plays. Chris, what do you got going this week? I like your pick here. I think it's a little bit more outside the box.
Yeah, my crush this week is going to be Tank Bigsby taking on the Chicago Bears in that London game. Look, we know the passing attacks usually haven't been so successful over in London, whatever the different reasons have been, whether it's the morning time, it's the weather, whatever could be the concerns. But we also see Tank Bigsby has been highly explosive when he's been out there and healthy. I know the reason coaches gave for his higher usage last week was that Travis Etienne's shoulder was messed up, and they had to kind of use Bigsby more often. Bigsby, Etienne's shoulder still be messed up this week possibly, but even if he's rotating between the two guys, I think right now you think Bigsby the more explosive guy. The Jacksonville offense looks like it's getting a little bit better back on track. If Trevor Lawrence can continue just to hit some guys once in a while, this offense should be in some scoring position. The Chicago defense is tough, but they're not tough for us to run. I like Tank Bigsby as a guy that you can have, especially the ECR right now at 29.
Yeah, shoulder injury, hurt pride. I'm not sure exactly what it is with Travis Etienne, but right now Tank Bigsby does look like the more explosive player. At worst, like you're saying, it's going to be a rotation between the two guys, and they may go hot hand approach like they've kind of done the past couple of weeks. So I love that pick there. Chase, who are you thinking about as your crush of the week?
All right. Well, first I'm going to say, listen, a lemon drop martini might feel like a pinky in the air drink to some of the football people out there, but let me tell you, 2 of those will do you upright. I switched to Oktoberfest and we're good to go right now. But my crush of the week right now is Daniel Jones from the New York Giants, quarterback, QB1, Danny Dimes, baby. He's got 18 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. He just got done carving up the Seahawks without Neighbors and without Devin Singletary, and he ran it 11 times in that game. If Daniel Jones is getting comfortable again with his mobility after coming off the injury here, we know he can be a dangerous runner. We've seen it happen before. It was just 2 seasons ago that this guy was a top 10 fantasy quarterback for the season. I mean, he can run. He is a good runner when he takes off. Cincinnati sucks on defense. Very much. Okay. They give up the 5th most points to opposing quarterbacks. Their pass rush has been absolutely terrible. They faced Lamar last week. Lamar Jackson, mobile quarterback. Guess what? He torched him for 33 plus points. Jaden Daniels a couple weeks ago, Oh, mobile quarterback. He shredded them for 28 in week 3. Patrick Mahomes, a couple weeks before that, mobile quarterback. Now, Mahomes didn't have a great day passing. He only threw for about 150, 151 yards, something like that. Had a couple of interceptions to go along with a couple of touchdowns, but that muted his fantasy value that week. But Mahomes did have his best rushing game thus far in 2024 against that Cincinnati defense, averaging over 7 yards a carry. The Bengals are favored on Sunday night. This game has a high point total. I expect that Daniel Jones and company might have to keep the pedal to the metal all game. He's a top 12 play for me, honestly, this week, if Neighbors plays. And if Neighbors doesn't play, because Neighbors is still in concussion protocol, which is why he missed last week. But if Neighbors misses, Jones is still on that QB 1 or 2 bubble for me this week, even without the rookie phenom. He's performing this year. He's doing what we want. We don't have to care if they want to sign him past this year. We don't have to care if they win games. What we care is, are they scoring fantasy points? And lately, Danny Dimes is doing that. Danny Dimes, he's my crush for the week.
Live by Danny Dimes, die by Danny Dimes. And without Neighbors, I don't know if that's going to be working out okay, even as a high-end QB too. But we will see. With Neighbors, I'm kind of with you. He's been a little bit sneaky lately. Like it maybe for a nice little sneaky DFS play, though.
Yes.
So here's my crush. And this hits home for me because I have been labeled an apologist for this player for years, and it is coming to fruition in front of our eyes. And I am going to run with this for as long as I possibly can. Jalen Tolbert has to be in your lineups, at least as a wide receiver 3 or a flex play. I got him at wide receiver 35. ECR's got him ranked at wide receiver 40 at the moment. Look, sometimes wide receivers from small schools take a little bit longer to hit. And let's remember, he was a 3rd-round draft pick, but now we have Brandon Cooks on the IR. Okay, that's already vacated some things. There seems to be something off about the CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott connection so far this season. Tolbert coming off a big staple game where he had 10 targets, had a game-winning touchdown, and 2 back-to-back weeks now with fantasy viable production. Over those last 2 weeks, he's been just over 80% route share with an 18.8% target rate. That's only 3% less than CeeDee Lamb, by the way, over the last couple of weeks. Those numbers put him in the category of a strong wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. And when you factor in the matchup with Detroit, we're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to the wide receivers so far this season, setting up for a high-scoring game with an over-under of 48.5 this week. Jalen Tolbert not only should have been one of the strongest waiver wire pickups of Week 6, he should be in your lineups for Week 6 with 4 teams on bye. So Tolbert, like I said, I'm going to milk this for all it's worth for now. But coming down off my high, going to the busts, the guys we don't necessarily want to play but have been pumped up with ECR. Adam, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, and look, you were leaning into something you've been saying for a long time, and I don't want to. I really don't want to. I think this player has. I think they've proved me wrong. Genuinely, I think they've looked very good on the field, and I admit they've been a better football player than I expected. But from a fantasy perspective, in this particular matchup, I am not in it with Bucky Irving. I think in Dynasty, I think he's proved me wrong. I think he's going to be something in this league, at least for a period of time. We've seen, things go either which way with some of these late drafted running backs. But regardless of that, showed some talent. However, he's not getting quite the volume so far, which has made him kind of touchdown dependent, because Rachaad White is still the receiving back in this offense. That has not seemed to go anywhere. And sure, he is actually getting the bulk of the red zone carries. The problem with that is that when Tampa Bay gets in the red zone, they don't want to run. That is not what they go to first. And if they want to run, honestly, they almost seem to prefer going with Baker Mayfield, running the ball off of some kind of fake pass. They ultimately want, in the red zone, they have wanted the ball in Baker's hands. That's who they trust in the red zone. So with the running back as touchdown dependent, and they don't really want to run the ball in the red zone in the first place, I'm a little bit concerned, especially when we talk about a game with an over-under of 41.5 with, an opposing quarterback is not doing so hot. Ultimately, I think this is going to be another one of those games where Baker gets his 2 to 3 passing touchdowns with 17 attempts and 160 yards. Baker's fantasy totals look awesome, but ultimately he didn't really do a whole lot. He just threw the ball in the red zone efficiently. Look, in half-point PPR, which is what we talk about on this show, Bucky Irving has 1 double-digit point finish, and yet on the ECR is the running back 23. He's a running back 2 on the ECR. Again, 1 double-digit point finish so far.
Was that the Eagles game by any chance?
I believe so. That was when he got his 1 touchdown. So I'm just saying I don't think it's worth betting on in general. I would have Rachaad White here if they flipped roles, just because in general these Buccaneers backs aren't getting the opportunity to run in the red zone, and that's what's going to actually get them points, especially in half-point PPR.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Adam. Now, the one caveat I'm going to throw here is that I do think Tampa Bay may blow out the Saints so badly that Bucky winds up falling into the end zone as a result of that and gets to close out the game because he is the closer of the two. I'm with you. Rachaad White's not going away as a pass catcher, but of the two right now, Bucky is the closer. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting for me. I still think RB23 is a little bit strong in general. We do have seen the Saints defense be tough against those runners, especially inside the tackle. So I'm with you on that part, and frankly for the rest of the season too.
I would not be shocked if he went for like 12 carries, 60 yards. That just doesn't really get you fantasy points. I think he'll look good on the
unless
field.
you fall in the end zone.
Unless you fall in the end zone, which to be fair is
Yeah.
possible. That has not been their tendency. To your point, maybe that changes when they're up by a ton. We just haven't seen that from them.
No, I totally agree with that. We do have a question coming in from Chaka. I want to get to it here. Would you trade Neighbors, Evan Ingram, I'm assuming Zach Moss, for, I'm assuming Tyreek Hill, Joe Mixon, Devontae Adams, and George Kittle? Now, I will say that you have to be 2 and 3 or better to make this move, but I personally am making this deal. Or is anybody on this panel not making this deal?
No, I'm jumping on that. On that.
With you.
Tua is going to be back, and when Tua comes back, Hill comes back. Mixon's not going to be hurt forever. Adams, I already said he'll be okay even if he stays in Las Vegas with AOC. And Kittle's in this tight end format. Kittle's been right. No, jump on that.
Do it, Chaka. All right, Chris, let's go to you. Who's your bust of the week?
Yeah, so this is more about like how Adam with the ECR. This is a guy I definitely would still play. So I'm not saying that's just but I'm not having him ECR. I have at number 5. That's Jaden Reed. I like Jaden Reed, but every time Jaden Reed has his big game, he crashes back down to earth next week. He usually finishes in the top 24 or top 30. But he's going to be a star, like I said, but he's not top 5 guy. And that's not this Green Bay team as Chase talked about. Romeo Dobbs is going to be returning this week, and Tommy Wicks isn't going to drop everything. He's been a target hog since he's been out there, and the way you attack this Arizona team is on the outside. One of the worst defenses versus the outside receivers, so you can sit there and attack them all day with this offense. I think there's a lot of other guys who can eat in this offense, especially the running game. And unlike your 49ers, Dan, I think Green Bay actually will remember they should run the ball throughout the game. So I think overall, this is a game that I think Jaden Reed, while I love what he did last week, I think he has a safe floor. I just don't think they have a number 5 ceiling this week.
And I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. It is against the Arizona Cardinals. We'll see if it's high scoring or not. But yes, this is a team you can run on. If you consistently run on them, it may take away some from the passing game. I'm a little bit bigger on Datavian Wicks with his matchup there on the outside. So I think that might play into a little bit too. But to your point, yes, we're not saying bench Jaden Reed here. Just maybe have a little bit lower of an expectation than what you've gotten over the past few weeks. Jaden Reed, by the way, just to throw this in there, I mean, maybe he pulls out the Deebo Samuel thing. I'm not sure, but he really feels like a regression candidate. He's not somebody who's getting the same type of target share, not somebody who's getting the same yards per target that you're looking for out of a typical top 10 wide receiver. So maybe he's a regression candidate, but he is getting that little extra kind of like Deebo. So it's kind of hard to write him off completely. And of course, I'm talking rest of season, frankly. One thing I want to get to real quick, since you mentioned the 49ers, this is just a personal thing for me. There's a personal message from me to Kyle Shanahan. Run play action. Okay. I just had to get that off my chest.
What is that?
Anyway. Yeah. Just the thing that makes the offense go. You're 29th now in yards after catch. You're 29th now in play action rate. The two things go hand in hand. I'm just saying. It's not like you haven't been able to run the ball. Anyway, I don't want to get off on the whole thing. That's more for offensive observations. Maybe we'll get to that after the Seattle game tomorrow night. I got to get to Chase here. Chase, who are you worried about the people are starting this week? Who's your bust?
I'm not worried about Jalen Tolbert. My dynasty shares of him are loving you right now, Dan. So thank you for that. Jaden Reed. Yeah. Listen, Jaden Reed has a nice safe floor. That's cool. That's why if you're playing him this week, you're playing because I think he has a nice safe floor in that offense. But my bust for the week is Brian Robinson Jr. And I hate to do it because I loved him coming into the season, but Brian Robinson Jr. is facing the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, he's been good. He's been a borderline RB1 this season, but he's coming off a poor performance last week against Cleveland. He had the 2 touchdowns last week, but look at how he ran. Look at the yardage he gained. He only gained 18 yards on 7 carries in the first half before they kept him out to monitor his knee injury. Now, Eckler looked healthy, I thought. Austin Eckler looked good. He's their pass catcher out of the backfield. Jeremy McNichols even got in the damn rotation there and scored a touchdown last week. Listen, the Ravens are tough against opposing running backs. There's questions about Brian Robinson's knee. This is a matchup that screams for me, stay away. He's outside my top 20. I'm steering clear where I can afford to. If you drafted him and you need to start him, you're going to have to start him, but temper those expectations. He's outside of my top 20 this week because of the matchup and coming off of the questionable knee injury. Brian Robinson Jr., that's my bust of the week.
Yeah, Chase, I'm with you. I couldn't quite get him outside my top 20. I fell him at 19. Now, part of that's to do with 4 teams being on bye, right? And it's hard to go with a guy who's been scoring the touchdowns. But I'm with you. I'm going to add something else. It's not the fact that he ran inefficiently. He's not 100% healthy. In fact, he probably should not have played last week. And that has been abundantly clear and obvious. So, yes, part of that with the fact that the one thing the Ravens defense has been able to stop is the running game so far. Yeah, this might set up to be a little bit more of an Austin Eckler game, and it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if that was the case.
Robinson has 5 touchdowns in 5 games. I don't think he finds the end zone against Baltimore. And if that's the case, and if he's limited at all, that's a recipe for disaster in your starting lineup.
Sure. Let's get to a question here from Dominic. Hey, guys, Stevenson, Spears, or Dottle this particular week? That is an ugly, ugly situation, but I totally get where you're coming from on this one. So this is kind of a loaded question in the sense of I got to see if Stevenson is in fact healthy. Now they've kind of downplayed the injury. It doesn't sound like he's going to miss this week. They're not really too concerned about it, but I do have Stevenson coming in right about RB 18 for me this particular week. I do think Drake May actually gives him a little bit of a boost. The one thing you've been able to do against Houston is kind of run up the middle against them. Had a strong game last week, didn't fumble the ball, that being a big thing there too. And with Spears, you're still talking about him being second fiddle in a rotation. And Dottle, I just kind of wrote up a whole thing actually on Fantasy Pros. It's going to go live, so a little bit live tomorrow, so a little sneak preview on that article. Rico Dottle, didn't put him in my bust, where I'm going to talk to him about a little bit. I'm going to put him in my bust in a second, but not loving Rico Dottle this week. I'll go into why in a bit. Yes, I have to go Ramondre Stevenson. Where you guys fall on this one?
If he's healthy, Stevenson's the only one that's the clear number one. If he's healthy of the 3, Stevenson's the only clear number 1 for his team. Yeah, I'll go Stevenson. Sorry, Chris.
No, I was going to say, I was saying the same thing, Chase. If Stevenson's healthy, then I think I go with Stevenson. If he's not, of the 2, I'd probably go Dowdle. It's a bad matchup versus Detroit, but he had been involved in the passing game. And if you're good, Dallas is going to have anybody else score a touchdown outside maybe Dan Glover, Jefferson Tolbert. It could be your good Dowdle.
Yeah,
let's talk about Rico. Hey, Adam.
I was going to say Dowdle's only saving grace if you do go that route is that, like we talked about earlier, Dak has been his ADOT under pressure has been very low. He's just getting the ball out to his check down as soon as he gets pressured. That's all that's going to save him because on the ground he's not doing anything.
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what I will say is a little bit interesting is that despite the fact that Aiden Hutchinson has been great, Detroit's not actually ranking very well right now as far as quarterback pressures are concerned. They're not getting a ton of pressure on teams right now. So I don't know if Dak will really be, outside of Aiden Hutchinson, I don't know how often he's actually going to be under duress in this game. But let's talk a little Rico Dowdle, shall we? Because this is my bust of the week. He's being ranked as running back 22. I think that's very strong for a guy with mediocre talent. I have him ranked down there at RB 32. Now, I can't get him out of my top 36 play, not this particular week, not with the fact that he has separated himself a little bit there from Ezekiel Elliott. But here's the thing, guys. Primetime matchups tend to stick in a fantasy owner's brain a little bit more than what goes on Sunday. And what we just saw was we saw Dowdle go for 20 carries this past week. We saw him score a receiving touchdown. We saw him finish as the RB3 overall this past week. And that sticks in the brain for these fantasy football owners when they see it there on prime time. This week, it's the tough draw against the Lions. Look, they have not fallen off at all from where they were last year. 5th least fantasy points allowed to the running backs. They've limited the big plays on the ground. They've allowed the 2nd least in yards after contact, the 7th least amount of runs of over 10 plus yards. And Dowdle himself has only made 4 missed tackles this entire year. He doesn't make people miss. He gets tackled right away. This does not set up in a situation where I think Dowdle's going to do much past the line of scrimmage. Maybe he does something in the passing game, but I think that's a big if in this one. So I am not playing Rico Dowdle unless it's a desperate flex play because of a buy fill-in for me. So that's my bust for this one. And with that, it wraps up the show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Operation Domination. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We'll be at Fantasy Sports Advice Network, at FF Advice Network on Twitter, and of course on our Facebook page. We're going to release the YouTube video out on Friday. We're having Dr. Brian Scott come on. We have we don't have as long of a list as we did last week, but we have big name injuries that we have to talk about. So make sure you tune in for that. Check out Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app. We're available to you everywhere. We'll be back with our preview episode next week at 9:30 right here on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel. So make sure you come on back, and everybody, good luck this weekend. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.